appreciate all being here with us and taking your time to address the audience. As the agenda had noted, we have approximately an hour with a panel and we have a Q&A session. But seeing that this is such an energetic audience, we've decided just to start with a brief introduction for each panelist, and then we'll open it up to questions fairly early, and I'm sure you have many great questions out there. So with that, what I'd like to do is have each one of you introduce yourself. And with your introduction, can you please describe your leadership style with a single word or phrase? Who was your role model when you were developing your leadership style? How has that leadership style evolved during your career, and what forces caused it to change? And if you could, please include a personal story. So I'd like to start with you, Suzy.
My leadership style, I describe it in one word, actually collaborative. And it's evolved. When I was young, I was highly influenced by both my parents. Who isn't, right? Your first influences. However, mine had a very, very interesting way of letting us find our way, but also create boundaries that seemingly were somewhat transparent. And so they gave us a lot of rope. And in that rope, there were two questions that would continue. One question was why, and the other question was how. And those two small words of why and how have been two words that continue to sort of stay in my head as we go along these years. And the one word that comes out in terms of my own leadership is really about purpose. So the older I get, the more I begin to understand, and I'm 54, so only beginning to understand, because I'd say there are different stages of leadership. I'd say the initial leadership is at the early stages. And what I'd rather suggest is there's something that's more enlightened leadership, which occurs as you get a little bit older, and you begin to understand how pieces are put together. So younger leadership might be about leading a project, leading a department, leading a function. And enlightened leadership may be more purposeful in nature with a higher purpose, a little bit more holistic, which is what are we truly trying to achieve here, and who's it truly going to impact, and how are they going to benefit, and how are my actions going to help them along the way so that they ultimately can help me. And we help one another in a more organic process. So I'd suggest my style has become much more collaborative. It has been collaborative, but that evolution has been one that understands that it leverages leadership instead of only having a leader that essentially leaders in a way that moves forward. I would prefer to think that it's more generative in nature, creating opportunities for others so that they can fly.
Thank you, Suzy. And Nichole?
Good morning. Good morning. Well, my name is Nichole Oliver, and I have been with General Motors for a little over 16 years now. I started my career with GM as soon as I graduated from college in 1999, and I've been there ever since. And as you heard before, I did work a couple of years as a summer intern as well, starting out in one of our manufacturing sites. So I would say to define my leadership style, it is one of coaching and giving feedback and building relationships. And that's something that I really recognized several years back when I went into my first human resource assignment. And I had to support a manufacturing organization. And the director, whose name is Martin, who has since retired, I was told, hey, he's very high maintenance. He works long hours, doesn't have a lot of love for HR. So, just understanding what you're getting into is going to be quite a challenge. And so I remember my first meeting with Martin, and I sat in his office and I said, I really want to learn more about you. So he rattled off his resume and told me about himself, and then he sat there. And I thought, okay, well, let me tell you about me. And so he sat there the whole time like this. And I was incredibly intimidated. And I remember, going home that evening, and I told my mom, "Oh my goodness, has anyone ever done that to you? Like, who does that?" So that was my first impression of Martin. So, but I was very. It was important to me to make sure that he and I had a really good working relationship. And so I decided that I was going to make it a priority to get to know him and to understand him for who he was, but also show him who I was as well as an individual. So throughout the course of our working relationship, we really got to a sweet spot. And I remember one instance in particular where he had a meeting with his organization. One of the things that his people felt was that, we really don't know Martin. We see him every day. He doesn't spend a lot of time with us, but we really don't know him. And so after that meeting, he asked me, and I was surprised. He says, well, how did I do? And I thought, wow, okay, he's asking me for feedback, and here's an opportunity for me to utilize that skill on someone that I was so incredibly intimidated with on my first meeting. And so I said, you did a really good job, and went on to tell him some other things as well. And I said, but since we're in that moment of giving feedback, let me tell you about my first impression of you several months back. And to my surprise, he welcomed that feedback. And he said, really, that was me? I did that? And I said, yes, you did. Yes, you did. But anyways, so that was a really, really momentous moment for Martin and I, because we had gotten to that spot where he trusted me. And I felt really comfortable utilizing the skill sets that I had in building relationships and giving feedback. And so I was able to utilize that skill throughout our working relationship, and I've been able to build upon that ever since. I think it's really important that people understand what they're doing that's great, some things that they have to work on as well. But in addition to giving feedback, you have to be willing to accept feedback as well. And people have to know that as your leader, I'm open to that. You know, please feel free to give me feedback, because my relationship with you is very important.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jamie Regan. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Keytech, where, as was mentioned earlier, we kind of bridge the gap between what's written on the back of an envelope for a product idea and getting to the point where it's actually buildable and manufacturable. So that's the business I'm in. In one word, my leadership style is service. And let me just take a second and say, isn't this fun? I really enjoyed what you guys said. And I really encourage you all to ask us a lot of questions, because some fun people up here. We're happy to answer any question you might have. But returning to my leadership style of service, it's always been one of service. My role model is Mother Teresa, who you might think, you know, that's kind of squishy and nice, but that woman was extremely powerful and had an incredibly broad reach in terms of her impact. And that's really what motivates me, is to do things that help people and have incredible impact worldwide. My leadership style, and I agree with what Suzy said. Early on, it was much more specific and tactical leadership, and now it's much more holistic and broad leadership, because I need to make sure the way I can have incredible impact is by having more people that work with me and for me have that incredible impact. So it's that, you know, ripple effect. One of the topics I want to raise here, which might be new to you, that I've seen in evolution in our business, is a term called co-opetition. That's cooperative competition. And it's become a necessary feature of our business. And let me just take a second and describe what I mean by that. Most of the products that our company designs and develops are global products. And so they're products that are universally designed for people all over the world to use. And they're complex products. So they have mechanical parts, they might have fluidics, optics, electronics in them. They are portable. If you think about an iPhone being attached to a diagnostic device, that's kind of a good mental model. So it's something where the process of developing these products becomes incredibly collaborative. It's never just one company doing this work. It's always 2, 3, 4 companies working together to make this successful product get to the market. And so the topic of co-opetition is something that I feel like has been a bridge for me between my viewpoint of being of service and the other companies that I work with. Essentially, if everybody's going to be humble and recognize what our company does well and what our company doesn't do well, then we're going to collaborate with other companies much more successfully on these products. And that success of the product is what everybody wants. So if you have 4 companies working together on something, let me just be a little bit more specific. So one of those companies might be mine doing mechanical and electrical design of some function of the product. Another company might be a battery design specialty company that has expertise that we don't have. A third company might be a wireless specialty company that's doing the software that allows the data that the instrument provides to be interacting with the internet, for example. And then the fourth one would be a manufacturer that's actually building the product. If each one of those companies recognizes that, hey, my company is really good at this, but not that, then I'm going to welcome that partner in, and the product is going to succeed beyond whatever we could do by ourselves. And so I think that that sort of epitomizes where my leadership has gone over the years, is to recognize that you need a lot of different people with a lot of different companies, even with different specialties, to succeed. And you have to be humble and have an attitude of service to welcome that kind of win. And then when you have that win, those people who might compete with you on the next project, on a third project, might look for you to collaborate with them again. So it's kind of a pay it forward kind of approach. So that's my summary.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay?
Thanks, Jenny. Everybody hear me? So Mother Teresa is one of your idols. So I'm a twin, and a big Catholic family. I'm a local gal, grew up around here. And my twin sister was named after Mother Teresa. So you see my name up there is Mary Kay. My grandfather, who's very religious, wanted it to be Mary Catherine. And my mother was insistent it'd be Mary Kay. So I was, thank you for that, Mom. And since that time, I had an 8th grade teacher that said, you're really a K. So I've been K ever since. My story's a little bit different. I will say one area that when I talk about leadership for me, it's all about inclusion. You know, I was fortunate enough, if you think that Gloria Amanda Flock couldn't hold a job, I've been with Northrop Grumman now for 28 years, and I've been in 12 significant positions, so you know I can't hold a job. And for me, what I learned, I was thrown into management very early in my career, probably in the first 3 years. So I was in my 20s, and you know, I had my hair on fire, and I didn't really know didn't know anything. And I was thrown into the factory floor. A gentleman in the back there was one of my mentors, Bob Barnes. So Kay, I want you to go out and be a first-line manufacturing supervisor. So I did that. And what I learned very early on in my career, it's about relationships. It's about people. You know, I was in my 20s. I'm running out the factory floor to take status, to run the program reviews, to let people know what's going on. And all these ladies and gentlemen that work for me probably had 20 to 30 more years of experience than me. And you know what I learned? I've got to talk to them. I've got to get to know them as people. I learned very quickly that the ladies in the wire bond area had bowling on Friday nights. It was really important to them. So Monday mornings we walk in, or Saturday mornings if we were working weekends, and I say, how's bowling, ladies? I learned very quickly that they had lives outside of work, and I had to get to know them. And what they did, and I didn't even see it happening, they took me underneath their wing, and they showed me how to be a leader. So for me, my whole career has been, I wish I was fortunate enough to know exactly what I wanted to do when I grow up. I still don't. But I like the aspect of coaching and teaching. I think if I had to do it all over again, and it's easy to play money morning quarterback with your life, by the way, at the age of 51. I think I'd be a coach and a teacher at the high school or the college. My twin sister actually works for Charlestown Retirement Community. She's the wellness director there, and she's got an awesome job. She shows up every day in sweats and teaches seniors how to do Thai. It's pretty awesome. One thing I will tell you is I had a lot of mentors, some whether I wanted them or whether I didn't. The best thing about having all those mentors is they told me what I needed to hear, not necessarily what I wanted to hear, which really helped me throughout my career. One of my favorite mentors told me, Katie, don't want your career to go like this. Because if it goes like this, too quickly, it's a pretty steep fall, and there's nobody there to pick you up. You really want it to go like this. You want to develop relationships, and you want to develop experiences. You want to sit in as many chairs as you can. So when you sit in those chairs, you don't judge the people that sat in the chairs prior to you. So that's a little bit of my story.
Thank you. So we do have Mike out in the audience with a microphone. If anyone has questions at that time, we'll open up to those questions. And if not, I certainly have some prepared as well.
Questions? We have a microphone. It's close.
Hi, I had a question for the group at large. Like you, I grew up in a generation where women were just breaking into manufacturing. And I had the opportunity, like some of you, to be in management training. And it doesn't seem like that's a possibility for a lot of kids graduating now. And I just wanted to get your impression on how we, as the older generation, can promote that kind of activity to get more women into manufacturing.
Good question. Is that for anybody on the panel? Is it anyone on the panel want to answer?
I mean, I can take that. You know, as you were saying that, I was thinking back to when I first started in the company. It was a time where we really didn't have any kind of training. I literally sat at a desk, got a huge book, told to read it, and my supervisor was in another building and came to see me 3 days later. I can say now with Northrop Grumman, we don't have that anymore. We have a lot of programs for folks when they first come into as new employees. We have what we call a professional development program. We allow folks to move from 3 or 4 different jobs within 2 years. In the first 2 years, they come to the company, and that allows them to say, hey, I think I'd like to go full-time over here. So we give folks that opportunity. And as far as training, you can't get enough of it. I personally do a lot of this kind of thing is training for men. If this isn't training for you in the audience, the fact you can get 4 pretty experienced folks up here telling their story, because we love to tell our story, because nobody else listens to us at home. My husband, who's retired, he said to me, he's retired. This is not a paid advertisement for the men in the audience. But, when we first got married, I was fortunate enough to get married later in life. My first marriage, I was in my 30s, my husband's second marriage, and I married my best friend and soulmate. And I can tell you that my career and my second half has been so much better than my first half. And it's only been because I had the opportunity. My happiness factor got very high when I married my husband, Bob. And he retired, and he said, I'll take care of everything. Now, this is someone that's been single for most of my life. When we first got married, I said, we have to have separate checking accounts. He said, sure, that's fine, okay, whatever you need. Now, he just says, hey, the Eagle flew, I left you some money in the bank account, let me know if you need any more. I don't know if he's run off or what. I don't know if he's run off with the mailman, or the cleaning lady, who knows. But no, he literally said, you go off and have fun today, okay? Enjoy what you're doing, because he knows that it hasn't been an easy journey. So I would say to your point about training, exposure for more and more women, I see it in spades now in the 30 years that I've been in the workforce. I just think it's just great.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'd like to add to that from my perspective. The playing field is different. Next generation manufacturing is going to be a different playing field. There's a lot of literature out there about what it's going to look like. And I don't mean 10 years from now, I mean right now. If you were to talk, again, to Suzy Ganz in great detail about what she's doing, there's transformation occurring. So the skill sets needed to be a part of this next generation manufacturing, they're not held by the people of the past necessarily. They're new ones that are going to be applied for the future, particularly as it relates to digitization and knowledge about how to make, Gloria mentioned agility before. That's really going to be a key part of that. So I would agree, there's a new playing field and a new set of rules. And those with the knowledge and the skills to make those systems work will be rewarded, hopefully.
I'm going to add that really quickly. My reaction to the comment was that the training that is needed to work in the workforce that we have today has to happen in middle school, not on the job. So there is good training that occurs on the job, but the transformation of the business, the pace of technology is so incredibly fast that everybody in my business is learning every day. But in terms of getting more women ready for this field, more women and men ready for this field, it has to happen in middle school, not even in high school or college. It's happening there, but it has to be that early.
Jenny, you want to mention something about FIRST Robotics real quick, what you're doing, and you and Suzy both are involved in that with the schools.
Yeah, FIRST Robotics is a tremendous program that introduces high school kids to how to build a robot, a very hands-on exercise that's almost like a sport, really, that's nationwide. And our company has been contributing to FIRST Robotics for, I don't know, I'm old, so I always underestimate, but maybe 7 or 8 years by sponsoring a high school team of women at Western High School the last 5 years, I think, in the FIRST Robotics competition. That is a great example of real hands-on, both teamwork and hands-on building and testing that I highly recommend as one of those forms of training. Suzy?
So I'd like to add a note from an entrepreneurial perspective as well, which is, we're watching this unprecedented shift from an analog economy to a digital economy. And in manufacturing, there is no sort of more existential change. It's this tremendous existential from analog to, and walking through the museum today, it was really interesting. Digital. It was so wonderful to see Northrop Grumman's early work in the digitization and digitalization of our world. But when we look at training and we say what kind of training, I would drill down just a little bit and say the kids that we see coming out of school are far more equipped for the new economy than many of our engineers that are older in nature, which is a really interesting paradigm shift. So that means that many that may be 40, 50 years old that aren't digital natives maybe working with an old set of skills. So I'd say to companies that are out there, please understand this, because this is going to create a real tension. The tension is kids that are 20 are far more equipped as digital natives than this older generation. And so if one doesn't have wisdom by the time you're 40, 50, this is problematic in our workforce development. Second thing I'd say is, if you're someone coming out and you're a student and thinking about, well, what does that mean for me? I would say, look at your world, understand and try to begin to understand these technologies and how they may apply to you, because ultimately all of them will be interconnected. So I work in the world of apparel identity. Apparel identity today is like a dumb terminal. You can be sure in a little while, Jenny Regan and I will be talking about it being a smart terminal. And so it doesn't really matter whether we like it or not. We're going to a smart, embedded, digital society. And as we do, all of these technologies impact each of us in our worlds. So the thing that I'd say also is, I learned, I came in and it was supposed to be 90 days 20 years ago. It was supposed to be a very, very short stint in Baltimore as strategic planning manager right after business school. And within a few months, they said, would you like to take over running this? And I said, sure. And Lion was not in good shape at the time. And you started with the factory floor. The interesting thing coming in is people will tell you what you need to do. And in many ways, they'll tell you what manufacturing people are unbelievable. They will share, they will teach, they will coach, and they will go through life's milestones. The technical side, however, is changing so rapidly that it's not only an internal function, it's largely an external function. And the world is changing at such a rapid pace, I say, to those that are out there. Connect with groups that are looking at how digital technologies may change your own world. And try to bring in an outside-in view instead of merely an inside-out view. Because what we find is this rapid pace of change is so advanced that it can't be under one roof anymore. And so I'd say, since it can't be under one roof, try and seek where that training may be. It may not be under your own roof. It may be in the world that you bring back to your roof.
I think we had a question over here a while back.
Hi, I just want to thank you all for being such great role models within the world of manufacturing and just as women leaders as a whole. I'm sure over time you've seen changes, particularly since you're all in fields that are primarily dominated with, or have previously been dominated with masculine impact. So as the leadership has changed over time, what do you see as the most challenging thing for women that are following in your footsteps? And what do you think that they could do to become better leaders for what's coming?
It's never enough.
Yeah.
I think one of the most substantial differences actually is in how we understand language. It's very interesting. We use metaphors in many. I've only worked in male-dominated fields. I worked in I worked in Wall Street prior to working at Lion. So I've only worked in fields that are related with men. And it's interesting, in Wall Street, they often use the metaphor of sports. So we talk about huddles and talk about other. Well, women look at huddles and they sort of raise their eyes and go, what? And women often talk in the language of female terms, which may be more of a hug, a softer language. And if you talk to a man about a hug, it's a very interesting thing. They'll kind of go, oh. And if you talk to women about huddles, they'll go, oh. And so this difference in language is something that makes our world seem apart, even though they're not apart at all. And I think that if we begin to navigate our conversations around language to understand each other a little bit better, I think we would be much more successful as a whole.
For those of you who are following us, hurry up. We're getting old up here. I say to everyone, believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, let others believe in it until you get it. You know, walk with a purpose every single day, and you will collide with destiny several times. That was some good advice I got from somebody. You know, as women, I think we're all a little tougher on ourselves than men. I don't know about the rest of you in this audience, but I have always been. I say every job that has been offered to me of a significant position, I always said, why me? Why did they pick me? And then I realized that they see something in me and maybe I don't see in myself. So let people get you that, you know, until you believe in yourself. But I would say, hurry up. We really want you there. I grew up in an environment when women were not really, you know, moving to the top. You know, it was refreshing for me. I sat on one of these panels recently, and I talked about the glass ceiling, and there were several people in the audience that said, what is that? And that was refreshing for me. So hurry up, ladies. And men, how do you feel about this conversation? Are you uncomfortable?
I have a similar kind of reaction to your question. It's a little paradoxical. I think that the challenges that women are facing in the technology businesses today are very different than what we faced. You know, when I used to go to meetings, and I've been in the business for 30 years, and I used to go to meetings all the time where there would be 12 or 15 people in the room and I was the only woman. And so there's something, it was challenging to get to that position, but once you're in that position, there's a recognition when you walk in that you must be something special because you made it to that meeting. And the other benefit of being in that position was that nobody ever forgot me. You know, she's that, yeah, that's Jenny. I mean, I've had people say to me 15 years later in a completely different circumstance, oh, I worked with you back in the 80s. And I'm like, I have no idea who you are. So there's a paradoxical thing where now that there are more and more women getting involved in the business, and I wish it was far more than it is, but there are more today than there were back when I was in it, that those benefits are not as significant as they were. And so I'm not saying that makes it harder, it just makes it different. The way that you interact with people is just different now than it was back then.
I'm going to jump in with Sylvia. Did you ask, were men comfortable with the position? Because I did ask that.
I think it was
All right, whoever said that, it's my job to pick the guy. So you can either raise your hand right now or know that I'm going to come after you. Come on. I see William Tiger. I see William Tiger, who's on my board, so I'm going to pick on one of my board members. Bill is the plant manager from General Motors. Bill?
Thanks, Mike. Well, I mean, I can give you my perspective, and really the only one that matters is how other people see me. But I'm comfortable. When I look at it, I'm half American Indian, and so you know there's women, and there's very few women. They're underrepresented in a lot of what we do. Just like there's, you know, if you're Hispanic, you can feel underrepresented, just like if you're Native American. And whether it's in the manufacturing field or the technical field. One of the important things that I think for all of us as leaders and future leaders is to realize that almost everybody you deal with can feel and not necessarily you want them to feel, but they can feel that they're underrepresented, and maybe it's more of a struggle. So you really do. There was a comment made that you really do need to try to be inclusive, because even if you think you are, again, it's not how you feel, it's not how I feel. It's really how everybody else sees you and how they react to that. So, am I comfortable with it? Yeah, I think it's really kind of cool, because I know what it's like to be in that underrepresented group and to go and try to encourage more people into the field and more people into manufacturing. It's really important too.
We got another guy in the back too. And Ed, mention your name too.
I'm Ed Mullen. I work for LCP Technologies as well as I'm the executive director of the Baltimore Robotics Center. So I know a lot about FIRST robotics and stuff like that. And it's not a comfort issue as much as a confusion. It seems like women are making great strides in medicine and the legal profession, but we're going backwards in engineering. So my question is, why is that? It seems so strange because there's so many jobs in engineering and manufacturing, but women just don't seem to be attracted to that.
I didn't know I was going to ask a question.
So a large part of what Keytech does, is medical devices, and so we're working in the medical industry, and it's just a fact that if you look across the disciplines of engineering, from aerospace to mechanical to electrical to computer engineering to biomedical engineering, which is a relatively new field, biomedical engineering is now more than 50% women across the country. And I believe that the reason for that is that women are motivated to help people, and this is a fact, this isn't Jenny's opinion, but there have been studies that show that women are going to be more motivated to have a concrete impact that benefits other people. And so it's easy to see that if I go into biomedical engineering, just like medicine, I can definitely see having an impact that's positive on people through healthcare. And I think our challenge is to let women know that every single field of engineering and manufacturing is helping people. And so one of the things that I do when I go out and talk to young students, men and women, is just start picking things up in the room. These glasses right here, okay? There are engineers and scientists that design these glasses I couldn't read without somebody's help. These microphones, you wouldn't be able to hear me if some engineer and some scientist hadn't designed and manufactured this microphone. So I think it's our challenge to make sure that men and women understand that the obvious benefits that you can identify by being involved in healthcare are across the board for manufacturing and technology.
Thank you, Jenny. I think you make a great point. I think, connecting engineering to something that's more concrete is very important, because people don't necessarily understand what an engineer does. It's a very elusive term, and putting it together like the robotics things that you support is very important, and showing, especially middle school girls, that it could be fun and it's impactful, and there's things that you can do that isn't sitting behind a desk. So I think we have the challenge as an industry is to really be able to vocalize what engineering really is, and maybe we need to make another term for it just to make it a bit more approachable. So I appreciate your input. Mike, any more questions?
I have one. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your experience with us today. And I have a question, thinking about the young people coming up and your comments about the middle schoolers. What would you like to see us do to try to reach young people, and especially middle schoolers? And to go back to this gentleman's question, I think middle school is when research has shown young women start to lose interest in science and technology. So my question is, what would you advise members of the audience to do to reach out to the middle schoolers?
I'm going to say exposing them more to the different industries. I know in working at Baltimore Operations, we do a lot of work with the community, and we have a lot of organizations that come through the plant to tour and to understand the manufacturing process and to see what we do and to see how we build. And I remember growing up in middle school, I don't recall ever really having that opportunity or someone saying, hey, why don't you consider this? Or you know, why don't you go see this operation, this manufacturing plant? So I think the more that we can expose children in middle school to different manufacturing processes and organizations, I think that would be a great help, as well as kind of building on the point that you made earlier, kind of dispelling the myths about going into engineering and technical fields. I know for someone like me, I'm a human resource professional, so I'm not an engineer. But as I was growing up, I was kind of afraid of math and sciences because I didn't think that was something I was naturally good at doing. So I think, you know, again, just kind of dispelling the myths and helping people understand that there is value and that, you know, there's people involved in building relationships. It's not just all about the numbers and the formulas. So that's my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Nichole. And I'll just add a little bit to that. I think it's also important when we do that is to bring the parents along with that. I think the parents have a huge influence on their children, and they can really help them through this period with middle school. I have a middle school daughter. She was always great in math. She gets to middle school, and all of a sudden she thinks she doesn't like math, you know, and that's a real challenge. And so, you know, to help her through that, you know, I have to be able to connect those dots, and I think that's important as well. And whatever it takes, you know, she will say, well, Mommy, you know, I like your clothes. Can I wear your clothes one day? I'm like, become an engineer, you know, whatever it is. Would you like to travel, become an engineer? You know, these opportunities are out there. But it matters, and once they get past that, then they can get focused on the science. So thank you, I'm sorry.
No, I like what you said, because I have a daughter and she is 4. She's going to be 5 in a few weeks. And so I tried to make a real concerted effort that outside of school, when we're at home, to really focus on the math and the sciences and the technical things, because that was something that I just kind of shied away from growing up. So just, again, building on your point, the parental involvement is very important as well.
And I would say one additional comment, and that is to give them space for self-discovery. You know, we're pushing information, we're pushing lessons, instead of providing spaces so that people can self-discover in terms of modality. And as we look at this, there's plenty of opportunities for people to connect and become engineers. I mean, they are engineers when they're designing something and creating something when they're young. They just don't know the word. And so when you hear it later on, it's, oh, I'm an engineer, that must mean you're X, Y, and Z. Instead of them being engineers and feeling like engineers and behaving like engineers. So I'd say for the educators out there, please create the spaces so that children can have self-discovery. And in terms of math, those that are teaching math, please give each child one more lesson, opportunity to drill down, because we find it's so interesting in terms of women in math. There seems to be this sort of like one lesson where somebody gets lost and they are lost forever. They then think of themselves as an incompetent mathematician instead of a competent, you know, person. And so for those that are considering what does that mean, I have 2 daughters, one that's graduating from high school this year and one that's a 9th grader. And it's very interesting to see their trajectory around competence or where they feel incompetent. And I'd say that, you know, for both of them, we've looked at that one lesson. Oh, I don't feel successful in this one thing, therefore I'm not. And then how to bridge that with, let's drill down a little bit more so that, you know, take it a little slower so that you get over the bridge.
So I'm a grandmother, so do a little reverse psychology on the kids, right? Because most children, they don't really want to do what their mom and dad wants, right? So just tell them they should go into a different field. Oh, you don't want to go into engineering. Next thing you know, they're going to want to go into engineering. My grandson, I really want him to go to University of Maryland, so I'm not talking about, you don't want to go to the University of Maryland, you want to go to NC State. So, guess what, he'll probably end up going to the University of Maryland.
One more point about engineering and design. If you look at the iPhone, which is the device that everybody has in their pocket and everybody points to as great success in design and engineering, it is to the youngsters in this country at once awesome and very intimidating to think about ever having the capabilities to work on something like that product. And so there are 2 thoughts I have with respect to that. One is to show, in my role, I can show people a bunch of junk, a pile of, I literally have these Tupperware bins full of parts that when I go talk to middle school students and high school students, I just dump it out on the table. And I can show somebody a nice, tidy, and beautiful end product, and then I can show them the 10 things that looked like crap that led to that product. And so that takes the intimidation factor away, because when these kids look at these devices, and I have 3 children, and they look at it and think, how did anybody ever make this thing? First of all, it was thousands of people that made this thing, and secondly, there were a bunch of iterations that weren't as pretty that led up to that thing. That's one idea. The other idea is art. It's art plus science that makes beautifully designed products. So let's not starve our children from artistic experiences in middle school, high school, and college. I'm an extremely strong proponent of pursuing the arts and science at the same time.
Any other questions?
I believe it's Sheryl Sandberg who's responsible for making the word bossy translate in the media. And for those of you who aren't aware, she's on a mission to eliminate describing young girls as bossy. I'm wondering, for women in positions of leadership, is there a need for bossiness?
Could you repeat that question a little louder, because I don't think we heard it back here.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering if there's a need for bossiness for women in leadership positions.
So who's the bossiest person on our panel? No, there's no bossy people. There's just bosses.
I'm Greg and Mike. You can't talk. It's my turn.
And Sue, what do you say to that?
I invited you guys. Let me go.
I think there's a real responsibility for women to stand up for themselves. And if that means that you have to be assertive, more assertive than you're comfortable being, then I think you have a responsibility to do that. Going back to what I said earlier about my leadership style being one of service, I feel extremely lucky to be able to lead the crew that I lead in my company. Just about everybody that works for me is better than I am at what we do. But in order for them to get exposure to the opportunities that allow them to do what they do so well, I have to be a little bossy and assertive and let people know how fantastic my company is and how much we can help them. And that literally sometimes means being louder than the person next to you. And I think it's required from time to time, but I don't think it needs to be me ever.
One of the things that I think I learned early on is folks really don't care how smart you are. You know, they respect the fact that you may be, and that you have a lot of ability, but they really want to see how much you care in a very sincere, transparent way. And I will tell you that your ability will get you, whether you're a male or a female, will get you to a certain level in a company. But what's going to separate you from everyone else is going to be your character and integrity. And you can never, ever, ever compromise that. Because if you do, you will never get it back. So in that whole process of maintaining your integrity and character, it may take a little bossiness.
It seems like we're hearing more and more these days about, in our fast-paced technological society, about the challenges of work-life balance. And as we heard from Laura Newman's opening comments, it can be a challenge sometimes, and perhaps women can be affected disproportionately. I'm curious about your experiences with work-life balance, and if you have any guidance for folks.
I'll start with that one, with work-life balance, because I used to struggle with that a lot. But what I will say, it's really important to define for yourself what success looks like, both professionally and personally. I think it's important to have support networks in place as well, individuals that you can go to and talk to and bounce things off of. It's important to have that same support network with your spouse or your significant other. They're the ones that are going to give you that candid and that honest feedback as well. I think you have to make a deliberate plan in terms of your career path. What jobs am I willing to take? What jobs am I not willing to take at the expense of my family and my family life? So I really think, just like anything else when you start a project, you come up with what success looks like. I think you have to apply that same discipline to your own life when you're trying to figure out how do I make my work life and my personal life balance. And I was recently reading an article, and it was kind of interesting. They were talking about work-life balance. And instead of focusing on balancing the two, how about trying to integrate both of those? Because there are things that you do in your work domain that you can utilize to help you in your personal domain as well. So perhaps it's not so much work-life balance, but getting to a point where you understand, how do I integrate the two?
McKinsey did this wonderful report a couple of years ago called Centered Leadership. And if you haven't read it, please Google it and consider what it looks like, because it looks like an integrated life. It isn't that these are compartmentalized, my personal life, my this life, my last life. We don't work like that. We're humans. We lead a very integrated life. So, and women are always their own worst critic. You know, no doubt about it. I should be, 10 pounds less, 20 pounds less, this, that, and the shoulds. So there are two things I say at this stage of life. One is that it looks more like a soup than a balance. A balance always reminds me a little bit of a teeter-totter, where you're having to, teeter this way or totter that way. And I think it's a little bit more like a soup, where you're trying to just, figure out the flavor that works for you, right? There's no right or wrong in this. And I think that we should be a little more forgiving of ourselves about what we should be doing rather than what we are doing or would like to be doing. The other set, in the more holistic side, I say, start backwards. What's the life you want to lead? Because ultimately, we end up choosing that life, whether we're deliberately choosing it or not. So if you say, here's what a happy life looks like to me, to your definition of success, then I think we make choices along the way that are often aligned with that. We're a little bit more mindful and aware of those choices. But, and there are plenty of great guys. I mean, I have to tell you, there is no way I could do what I'm doing without a great husband. And many in the audience, I know, we're supported by, our other, whether it's our work other or whether it's our home other.
I think it's kind of funny, a little story. It's probably about 15, 20 years ago. I was on a conference call with our biggest client regarding an intellectual property issue around something we were designing. So it was me, it was our largest client, the CEO of that company, a very powerful man, his attorney, who also a very powerful man, and a project manager. So the four of us are on a conference call, and it's, 6:30 in the evening. It's a big issue. It's something we have to resolve by the next day. And we pretty much got it resolved, but then, sometimes those conference calls just keep going on, and you're like, we're done, I just want to get out of here, but you're staying on. And the attorney said, gentlemen and Jenny, I hate to say this, but at this point in the conversation, I have to drop off because I'm late for my son's softball game. And the client said, yeah, you're right, we pretty much got it handled. We can wrap it up here. We hung up, and I put the phone down and did a happy dance. Because it wasn't me. It was somebody else on the call. This goes back years. But my point is that the soup that Suzy referred to is so true these days, and I think we're freer to outwardly express our integrated lives than we were 20 years ago.
So to the work-life balance, I say just be comfortable with your choices. And, you make choices in your personal life, it's the same thing with work. There are no wrong choices. They're yours, and you have to live with them. And I think what's balanced for for one, might not be balanced for another. What was balanced for me 10 years ago might not be balanced for me now. I'll tell you, I got a little bit of a wake-up call. I became the vice president in 2004, so I was probably 41 years old. And I was drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit. I was the vice president of manufacturing. I thought, wow, 2,500 people reporting to me. I need to be working 7 days a week. And I had a boss that did the same thing. In fact, I had a boss that at 11 o'clock at night, I used to say, I can't solve the problem before you're sleeping. let me go to bed, I'll get up, get the team. But the wake-up call for me, I was getting my annual physical, and I started having high blood pressure. Now here I am, workout nut, you know, fitness, athlete, pride myself on all that kind of good stuff. And at the age of 41, I was going, are you crazy, Kay? So I said to my boss, I walked in, you know, after I went to the doctor, and I said, you know what? I got to get back to my routine. So it didn't stop him. I mean, he still called me as I'm on my elliptical in the morning reading heavy. He's like, what are you bringing that for? I said, I'm working out. I told you, I got to get into my routine. So he didn't change, but I chose to change. So that's why I say, be comfortable with your choices. You're the one at the end of the day that has to live with them.
Hold on, Bill.
So no one really wants to have a failure or a spectacular flame hour or anything like that. Well, most of us do. So what would you say is, if you ever had one, how'd you handle that well? And then what did not handling it well, or you saw somebody else that perhaps also had a similar issue and didn't handle it well? What did those two look like?
I'll touch on that. So in a case where I handled it well, so first of all, I didn't take on all those assignments and not have a lot of challenges and a lot of perceived failures. Don't let the mistakes define you. It's how you handle them. That's what everybody's watching. I had a mentor very early on in my career. We had a disaster on the factory floor, and I thought we were going to have to recall products that went back years and years and years. And I pretty much turned in my badge and I said, here, you can get somebody else to lead this effort. He said, Ken, you're doing everything you can. It's not the mistake. It's how you handle the recovery. So we're all going to have challenging times in our career. I mean, that's why we're in the positions we're in. So don't let the mistakes define you. A situation where it didn't go so well, I will say that anger got in the way. And this lesson that I learned very early in making those missteps was don't let anger get in the way. Because as soon as anger comes into the equation, somebody else is in charge. You can't let that happen. You got to keep the team calm. Again, they're watching. How do you pull the team together? How do we recover?
Any questions? Over here. Chris?
Hi, I'm Christopher Maryland with Pride. We promote products that are made in the state of Maryland. And shameless plug, we hope that all of your companies that don't belong will join as members. What that has to do with this agenda today is not only our manufactured products made here in Maryland, but the products of our education system go out all over the world to fuel companies. I'd like to ask what the business community is doing to be sure that the products of our education systems from K to 12 and now from daycare, from preschool through 12 and through college is doing to make sure that students are aware of the opportunities right here in Maryland before they look beyond the backyard of Maryland.
It's a great question. So Maryland is one of those states that actually exports knowledge. When they say what product we export, it's probably our largest product. So, based upon the number of education institutions, number of research centers, and other things that go on within the state. So you bring up a really great question, which is, what are we going to do to retain the talent that we're developing here? So there are a lot there, and it's on many people's radar screens about what we're doing. But just having the question, quite frankly, should put it in the minds of all of us of what can we do to retain the talent that's coming out of our schools and graduate schools and research centers. So as we look to one another, at Lion as an example, we have internships at all levels because we'd like to retain the talent here. On a more, I'll let my colleagues speak, but we find the talent here to be unbelievable.
I think, there's probably not another state in the country where we can get the kind of technical talent we can get here for our businesses, and Keytech does the same thing. We do a lot of hiring from local hiring. I think the reason, another observation is one of the reasons people leave is for opportunity. That's probably the main reason people are leaving. They see more opportunity outside the state than they see here. And I think we need to do a better job of identifying real opportunity in the state of Maryland as opposed to outside the state of Maryland. I'm not sure exactly how you do that. But I think one of the aspects of that is to better communicate how international our businesses already are. So our company does, at any given time, we're working on between 8 and 11 different product development programs. All of those products are going to be sold outside the U.S. They're going to be sold in the U.S. and outside the U.S. Our supply chain and our clients are outside and inside the U.S. So we've got projects going on right now in Asia, we have projects going on in Europe, and we have projects going on in South America that we're actively involved in. So if you are a technical talent that's emerging from school and you want to do something that's international and sexy, you can do that here in Maryland. How do we let them know that? I'm not a marketing person, but I think communicating that message would go a long way.
On a larger state basis, clearly there are a variety of commissions that are in process right now to look at this on a larger scale basis, which is this talent that's leaving the state instead of staying in state. So you probably heard recently that there's a new private commission by the legislature of Maryland to look at issues such as this, which are what are the opportunities in Maryland that relate to economic development and how the entire chain of economic development within our state, from the good work that we do in R&D to its commercialization to creating more opportunities here locally.
Hi, my name is Jenna. I work at Northrop Grumman here in the factory. I think we've talked a lot about some really great advice for the next generation of people, but I'm curious for those of us who are early or have already made the decision to be in this field, what kind of advice would you give, or what are you seeing or not seeing that is holding back the leaders that case that you're waiting for?
Don't underestimate yourself.
Jen, I'm going to use this as a recruiting opportunity. It worked for me. When I look back on my career, I had the opportunity, it looks like I planned it. I sat in a lot of seats, a lot of different disciplines. My advice to you, take advantage of the size of a company like Northrop Grumman and sit in a lot of seats. And before you know it, you'll sat in a couple seats, and you'll be the hottest commodity relative to everybody will want you on their team. They'll want you to lead the team because you've got so much experience and you've developed a lot of relationships. And pull on those relationships. Take some of those folks with you. So I'm serious. I really want you to come along.
Okay. And you want her to come work for you, right? She already does.
We can bid this out.
My recommendation is to have a vision for yourself and communicate that vision. Because far too frequently, I ask people, what do you want to do 5 years from now, 10 years from now, men or women? And they can't articulate that. And that makes it harder for your leaders to then help you achieve what you're trying to achieve. So have a vision for yourself, have confidence in yourself, but then communicate that vision would be my recommendation.
And I would say, too, be relentless about that vision.
Yep.
Don't let someone...
It could change, too, right?
Yes, it could definitely change.
But be relentless.
Yeah, absolutely. Be relentless about that. I would also say to focus on the things that you're strong in. Focus on your strengths. And yes, I know that, we all have weaknesses and opportunities, but I think that you get a lot farther if you focus on your strengths as opposed to those things that you're not so good at, or perhaps those things that you're just not naturally inclined to do.
And I'd say seek out mentors, and I mean this very specifically. You hear this very generally, but I'd say this very specifically. When I was a youngin at Wall Street, I would look for the analysts that were covering various stocks, various industries, and I'd say, can I take you out to lunch? Can I take you out to breakfast? Can I annoy you? And they were fine with it. And then we became friends. And then they shared more and more and more. And as they shared more, there was often two things. One is they shared not knowledge, but they shared wisdom, which became very helpful. And I always find it an interesting question when someone asks you to envision a few years out, because I think that's very hard to do. I think it's hard to do because I'm not sure about anticipatory guidance, which is, what does that next age and stage actually look like? And I think the things that corporations can help with is have people that act as mentors or act as sharers, if you will, to be able to suggest, here's what I do, here's what my life looks like, here's what is on my plate, here are the decisions that I make, here is what this looks like, and here's the life that I lead as a result of that. I think that in understanding that, it helps people to connect with that vision a whole lot better than just seeing someone in the role and the title. And I think making that gap provides some pretty good opportunity for both to come together, both in relationship development, as well as probably envisioning. So, but I would say be relentless about reaching out to others, particularly, a little bit Vine-like, not in just one sector, but in many sectors, to get your own view of the world.
Sylvia, I'd be curious to hear your reaction to that question too.
I think it's difficult. It's great in a large corporation because there's many opportunities, but it's also difficult because there's so many people there that you're, competing with, if you want to say that. And so I think some of the advice that the panel has given is really very valid. You have to really stand out, and by standing out, it's not enough to work hard. You have to work hard, but you also have to network. You have to be able to, engage in things. You have to take risks. You have to go beyond, your comfort zone. It's easy to say, I'm great at this job, I really want to do it really well, and continue up this chain. That life is gone. You have to be able to say, I'll take a risk over here, and you may, not know what you're doing, and you may, I've taken positions where I have no idea what I'm going to do. But you fake it till you make it. You get there and you say, I know I can do it, I have the confidence. You reach out to who you can go to, and you help. And like Kay said, we have many people to reach out to that will give you that top cover. So I would say, take a risk, but I think in the core of everything, you need to have a skill, and you need to have a base. So my recommendation also is not to come and every year change. You need to have fundamentals. You need to have experience in some field, whether it be engineering or a technical field.
Speaking
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just wanted to add one more thing. So in addition to all of the great things that were mentioned, especially with having a mentor, is to also have someone that acts as a sponsor for you, someone who can advocate on your behalf and say, you know what, you want that person on your team. I know that individual, I know what they're about. You don't want to miss an opportunity to have that person serve on your team as well. So I think it's really important to have someone that can be a sponsor and advocate for you on your behalf as well.
Nichole, that's great. Hey, speaking of standing out or speaking out, I need to mention two friends of mine that came in late who are in their own realm are outstanding leaders in different areas. I mentioned Kathy Snyder earlier. She's the president of the Maryland Chamber, and Kathy has done an extraordinary job, and I'm going to say this, in a man's world, making folks understand the importance of pro-business Maryland. And I just want to thank Kathy. She also, Suzy mentioned the commission that the Mike Bell and Mike Bush put together. Kathy and the Chamber put together what's called the Maryland Competitiveness Coalition, of which we're a member of. And I'm going to tell you, because of her leadership, I think this other commission down in Annapolis got going. And she's really put the wheels on the car that's going to make Maryland a much more pro-business. So, Kathy, I just want to acknowledge that. And she's getting ready to retire, but we don't want her to leave. We hope that she continues to work with us. The other good friend and leader is my good friend Deb Kilty. Most of you know Deb. Deb is the head of what's called World Trade Center Institute. We're talking about international. She is everything you need to know international. And it just so happens that Deb, and I'm going to say this, 8 or 10 years ago, we did this forum. And I think as a result of that, I'm going to take credit, Deb decided to do something that kind of upped us a great deal. She does a program on women and on an international basis. And I want to tell you, everything that goes on inside of that room is very similar to what's here. But I'd like Deb just to tell just a few minutes about that, because it might be the thing that you want to participate in next if you want to continue conversations like this. Deb?
Thank you, Mike, and thank you to all the panelists who are here this morning and just sharing your insights. I had to be here late, running a couple other meetings, and then so I just got in about 10 minutes ago. So thank you so much for sharing what you've shared already. Mike is right. At the World Trade Center Institute, our center of gravity is international. It's international business, and we do a lot to service people in the international business field. But what was missing 8 years ago was a context for women in international. And so we imagined, we had a couple of women on our board, and we said, wouldn't it be neat to see if we can get women leaders together, just the women leaders who are doing business globally, just to talk about and share the unique experiences that women share in the international realm. So we hoped to get 20 people in a group. We had about 80 women show up the first year. We're over 300 now. It is a women's only event. It's a little different. It's a lot of stand-up and sharing and changing tables and meeting new people. And it is also talking about women who have certain experience in individual countries and what their unique experiences share. This year we'll also focus on leadership. What is working in major corporations and smaller corporations on helping women progress up the ladder. We've focused on things like the religious component and women. We've focused on gender inequality in many, many countries and what you as a woman leader can find and expect and how to overcome that and how not to take everything personally, etc. So this event is on May 21st this year. I thank Mike. We're a partner as well in the Inside series where we go inside manufacturing firms and look at both the manufacturing engineering component as well as the international side of the equation. So thank you, Mike.
And also, she's no stranger to manufacturing. Vice President Worldwide, Procter & Gamble Cosmetics. So that's what she did in her earlier life. So anyway, other questions?
Hello. Hello. So my name is Ashley Parker, and I also work at Northrop. And I'm going to sort of piggyback off of Jenna's question. For someone who's sort of up and coming in their career, how do you overcome setbacks and not let them define you and sort of move on and develop from those in your personal careers?
So many setbacks. How much time do you have? And by the way, I'm sure Kathy and Deb will tell you the same thing. So setbacks are such an interesting word. Well, I can tell you, is it the most? So there's setbacks that we cause. There are setbacks that we're impacted by because of the external environment. And I think that setbacks are something that is probably short-term, when you're beginning your career versus something over time where you say, that was that learning spot where I learned this. And so that language of setback is one where you say, something happened, I learned something from it. I think what you do is you pick up, you sort of dust off your skirt or pants and you move along. And at the time, it may seem difficult to do because you may be looking at it much more personally than somebody else does. You may look at yourself and say, I've been a failure, I did this wrong, I did this whatever. Whatever the situation, we all have setbacks. Not only do we have big setbacks, we have small setbacks. Oh my goodness, come out and we'll all tell you about our careers. But the point being here is, what do you do about it? I think what you do is you take a moment to reflect. You say, well, what does this mean? What have I learned from that? And first of all, you're here, which means you're still breathing. Second of all is, what specifically happened here? Is there something that you can understand from the situation that gives you something that you can take with you? It really is a piece of good learning versus a setback. And so, and I'm sure it doesn't feel like that at the time. It never does. It always feels, much more personal. But I'd say the key to it is just to reflect, gain knowledge, and develop traction in something forward. And that setback will be in the rearview mirror pretty soon.
I agree with everything that Suzy said, and I will definitely personally say that you have hundreds of setbacks in a career that spans 30 years, and it never gets easier. Each time you have a setback, you still kind of it hurts. There's pain associated with it. So it's not like you're looking at these women up here, oh, we got that down. That setback thing, yeah, we figured that out. You do learn from it every time, but it is painful every time. So you have to be willing to accept the fact that you're going to have, you're going to have some pain associated with the setback, and at the same time be productive about it. I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's not like it gets easier.
I like what Kay said earlier too, in response to Bill's question about how do you deal with failures, and that's not letting that define you. So if you have a setback, don't let that define you. And something that I learned several years ago from a woman named Liz, and she was phenomenal and taught me a lot about my own self. And that is just to give yourself grace. Give yourself some grace. We're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. And it's okay in that moment to be upset about, the setback, to mourn the setback, but certainly don't stay in that place. And again, don't let it define you, but give yourself permission to give yourself some grace.
It's Ashley, right? So it's going to be tough to kind of get this because I know you're early on in your career, but back to Suzy's point, develop a lot of mentors, and not just your peers, folks below you, above you, folks that you trust. The saying, keep your friends close, your enemies closer. I think it's a bunch of bunk. I think you should understand what your enemies are doing. But I think you need to surround yourself with people that are going to tell you what you need to hear versus what you want to hear. Another bit of advice, you're not always going to be working for a boss that's the best boss in the world. I kind of learned that the hard way. I was taking advice from these bosses early on in my career, and they were actually idiots. One of them, I said, don't write a book on leadership, no one will read it. But what I had was I had a lot of mentors. I called a friend a lifeline. I sound like a game show, like Regis right now. But seriously, you need to bounce ideas off of folks like, hey, this is what's happening. And one thing I would say in your journey here, develop a lot of self-awareness about yourself. And the more you have self-awareness about yourself, the better off you're going to be. Because you're gonna get in situations where you're going to go, I really have to do something differently. I need to fix this. Or it really might be that idiot boss. You don't know. So that's why you really got to take each situation as it comes. I can tell you that I've had to reinvent myself a couple times in my career. I wasn't always asked to take every job. Sometimes I always said, hey, we need you to go do that. So, I had to kind of redefine it. What am I doing here? How's this working? At one point in my career, I thought about leaving the company. I was at a stage in my life where I was probably feeling a little bit sorry for myself. Wasn't feeling as though I was being valued by the company. The good news for me is I was married to Bob, who was much more wiser than me. And he said, hey, Kay, you just got to be patient. Just be patient. The grass isn't any greener on the other side, and he was right. So that self-awareness, one book that I really, really love is called Now Discover Your Strengths, because I'm a firm believer that after the age of 8, you can't really fix anything. You are what you are. You can fine-tune things and tweak things, but Now Discover Your Strengths this is where you get all your energy. Every day you wake up, this is who you are. My number one strength is I'm a wooer. And in a very technical environment, that's not good. I have to win others over at all costs. I have a strong belief system. I'm a motivator. Everything is about interpersonal things. If you learn that about yourself, then you surround yourself with people that complement your style. So that self-awareness factor, I think, really helps a lot.
We have a question here.
Hi, good morning. My name is Leonie Hermans. I'm with the Department of Business and Economic Development for the state of Maryland. And I guess this question is specifically for Jenny and for Suzy. When you consider the ecosystem around manufacturing in the state, where do you think our opportunities are to grow entrepreneurship in manufacturing?
Well, with this digital economy, as technology changes, there are tremendous areas for entrepreneurship at that intersection of manufacturing and entrepreneurship. A couple of examples. So we look at tools like 3D printing, which are just in their nascent, in the really beginning stages. And as we look at what the power of a bottom-up economy is, and we look at tools from personal production and what that means in terms of innovation and invention, I would suggest that we're at almost the pre-stage of having what can be small distributed manufacturing locally. I think that Maryland, there's a lot of room for Maryland to be better structured, to be aware of those opportunities. I think there are opportunities with regard to new technologies that will impact all of us in personalization in every which way, that will be manufacturing or production oriented, and with new channels such as e-commerce and sustainable supply chain that also have to do with sort of either producing things locally because people want them locally, or producing them locally because they have a channel direct to the marketplace. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, or if you, but I'll pass it along to Jenny to add more thoughts. But I think there are tremendous opportunities, but I think these thoughts have to be organized and connected.
I'm going to say that I have a couple of answers. One, on the manufacturing side specifically, Maryland has so many assets in highly complex technological manufacturing that other states don't have. And we need to figure out how to allow economic development to occur by leveraging those assets in actually making things here. And so I don't have a good answer to that one. I just know, that there's a gap in Maryland between the skills that we have for highly complex manufacturing and actually generating more business in that area. I think reshoring is going to benefit us greatly, for example. I mean, I think there's reshoring going on for a lot of reasons, and we should be able to take advantage of that as a state. But at the very other end of the spectrum of product manufacturing is the front end ideation and concept development and design of these products. And I think that, and I've said this for a decade, so everybody who knows me in here isn't going to be surprised, Maryland is missing a huge, enormous opportunity to commercialize the tremendous intellectual property that's occurring. The new design and product intellectual property that's coming out of our universities and our federal labs here just is not being commercialized. And we're missing a huge opportunity there that other states are benefiting from. So, the one that we always get compared to is Massachusetts. There's no institution in the country that's benefiting from more federal funding for basic research and commercialization than Johns Hopkins. It's #1 in the country. Where is that going? We're not seeing commercial product coming out of that. It's a problem that we've been working on for years. I'm just picking that as one example. You probably know there are more of those. But to me, being able to, again, it really, in my view, comes down to two things in the state of Maryland. One is we don't have enough people who are risk takers, willing to be CEOs, who run these small businesses around new intellectual property. We need to recruit more of those people to the state with experience. And two, we need money. The state is doing a good job of identifying and funding new small businesses around new intellectual property. It's just simply not enough money. It takes longer, the development process is longer, and these people are running out of money before they get to where they need to be.
I agree. The funding here, in terms of an ecosystem of venture capital, is missing compared to Massachusetts, compared to other states that have the same level of innovation that Maryland does. There are true elements missing, and the other is a little bit of personnel grab and the tension between the government sector and the commercial sector. So, agreed.
I'd like to just chime in because what you just talked about, Jenny, is at the heart of where RMI is right now. In fact, there happens to be a letter to the editor 2 days ago from me where it talks about what we invent in Maryland needs to be made in Maryland. And that's the other piece of the equation. We know in Maryland we're losing manufacturing, and yet we're a star. We're a star on innovation. I just had lunch with Rick Kerr the other day, and we talked about that. Nobody can beat us in innovation, creativity, entrepreneurship. And it's time, more than ever, to put together the game plan to create the other half of the pie. We have innovation, we don't have manufacturing. So I'm all with you. And seriously, that's going to be a key agenda of RMI, is to say, particularly with the new commission, why are we allowing all this innovation to be made in another state when we need to have a game plan, quite frankly, that says we're going to start making it here. So personally, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that there's a lot of money that we're losing because we're not building on that great opportunity to transfer that technology into made products in Maryland. We had a question here. I took the microphone away.
Hi, Terry Solomon from Northrop Grumman. We talked a lot about the knowledge that we have here in the state, but unfortunately a lot of that knowledge is leading to other opportunities outside. I know from Northrop Grumman, in order to recruit the top talent, show wonderful videos like we did earlier, we make everybody cry. And I was kind of interested in what your companies are doing to attract the women that are coming out of universities to your companies.
I'll answer that one real quick. Keytech is pretty involved in the universities, in the local universities. As I mentioned earlier, we do most of our recruiting locally. And so we're very involved in I'm involved in the Women in Engineering program at the University of Maryland College Park. We participate in design days at Maryland and Hopkins and UMBC and a couple of other universities. So our company we're 35 people, so we're not anything like Northrop Grumman, but we give to the universities, and we thereby receive from the universities the opportunity to talk to their best students. We're a very lucky company. What we do is sexy, and so the students want to come work for us. We don't have much trouble recruiting, but we need them to understand that we're here, and so we get the visibility by participating with the universities.
We had a question over here.
Hello, my name is Nichole Hickson-Oliver. I work at Mitsubishi Heavy Industries Coordinated Machinery Division. I've heard each and every one of you mention mentors. I'm 27 years old, just finished up a Carey Business School. There are no women in management in my company. How do we go about finding the badass ladies? Are they all in this room? Because I want to give you all my business cards. So how do we approach you all? How do we say, we are awesome, we are in manufacturing? I've heard each of you mention mentors, so please go into that for me.
The best mentor I had early in my career was a man. I'll start there. So you don't have to find a woman to be an effective mentor for you. And I guess the other thing I'll mention is that another interesting story, I have a client who runs a technology business in Maryland, and he called me maybe 5 or 6 years ago and said, hey, I just hired a really promising young woman to work for me. Would you please mentor her? And I said yes. So the second answer is you can have effective, and you should have effective mentors outside your company, because you will, whether that mentor is male or female, and whether they have a certain amount in common with you and other things that are diverse from your experience, you're going to learn from all of that. So I think reach out beyond your company, and don't overlook those good male mentors.
I'll try.
And I'd say more specifically, reach out to Mike. Serious. He puts together people with people, and somehow all of us have benefited from knowing him and being a part of RMI, and whether it's today or another session that he has along the way, we've just met and been mentored by so many along the way that, connect with Mike, and he will either connect you to or connect us with one of us. We'd be glad to coffee, breakfast, whatever you're up for.
I need to share a secret here. Thank you. We're talking about how women get help by men. I got to tell you, thank you, Sue. Sue is one of my closest friends. Mike Galeazzo could not do what he does today if it hadn't been for the women in his life. I'm an Irish-Italian guy. I'm always right. I fight for what I want, and I never listen. And Suzy Ganz looked beyond the external and looked inside of me. And always she's there to calm me down and to get me to have perspective. And similarly, my working relationship with Deb Kelty and with Kathy Snyder. I've learned a great deal. So if there's something to be said about what I'm doing, it really is a reflection of the people in my life. And men, let women into your life. Don't be afraid, because you'll be a much better person for it.
The audience has done a great job of asking most of my prepared questions, but there is one that we've touched upon, but we really haven't talked through. And that is, as a woman executive, how do you deal with conflict and confrontation? And do you think you deal with it any differently than your male counterparts? And Nichole, I'm going to start with you, if you don't mind.
My style of dealing with conflict is to utilize humor where it's appropriate. I try to take the emotion out of the situation if I'm in conflict with someone. Take a few moments and think about it and say, okay, what am I getting upset about, or what are they upset about? Am I really hearing them? Are they really hearing me? So instead of just jumping right into the situation and trying to resolve it quickly, I try to take the emotion out of the situation and check myself before I go back to that individual and say, okay, let's talk about what just happened here. Again, I said utilizing humor where it's appropriate. That depends on the type of relationship that you have with someone. I found for me it works because it helps to diffuse the situation and it helps to calm both parties down. The other thing I would say is just being honest, being candid and being authentic with that individual during the conflict, and making sure that I am listening to what they are saying that I may have done to offend or to contribute to that conflict.
I will emphasize the honesty and integrity and the candid nature of conversation that you mentioned. It seems like I used to be, when I was earlier in my career, I was afraid to be candid. And if there's one thing that I would, and I don't know, you know, I don't have hindsight 20/20 on this one. I don't know if people would have received my candid comments as well earlier in my career as they do now that I'm older. But it is something that is extremely useful, provided that your perspective in the conflict is one where you're working toward the best solution for everybody. So if you're sincerely working for the best solution for everybody, and you have something very difficult to tell somebody or to recommend to resolve a conflict, being candid and apologizing. I would apologize for being candid, because that just kind of lets everybody off the hook. I just say, oh, you know, I'm just going to say it like it is, and I'm really sorry if this is going to offend you, but, and then I say it. And it's very constructive, and people do respect it, but they respect it because you're coming from a place of wanting the best for everybody.
I would say it doesn't get better with age. And everybody in the room knows it. So if you're the leader, don't underestimate your presence in a very difficult situation. Because everyone's thirsty for you to do something about it. And they may not say it in the room, but they are saying it once you do it. So it doesn't get better with age. I have a very strong belief system. Just be as honest as you can and transparent with people. And to Nicole's point, stick to the facts. Take the emotion out of it. Emotion is, you know, it's like anger. It doesn't, no one can really relate to it. But I would just stick to the facts. You know, it's kind of funny because I always laugh at folks because the person that walks into the office is always upbeat. How you doing? Great, great, great. Everybody's getting coffee together and everybody's just kind of ignoring her. Then you get the one person that comes in and says, I lost the house, the kids, everything. They're like, really? Everything? So people feed on that kind of behavior. So the more you can, you know, just stop that, and just the more you can make it a healthy place to work, people are thirsting for the leader to do that. So don't let it, you know, don't let it age.
Right, and that's a great comment, which is, you know, the difference between sort of confrontation and conflict and bullying. And so I go with a mantra of no building. I try to eliminate toxicity. Conflict, absolutely. Disagreement of opinion, absolutely. Have to have space for disagreement. We want different perspectives. We need different perspectives. But the difference is how we present them. So part of that may be, can you bring differences of opinion into a central forum? Can you create a space for people to unpack? Because sometimes differences of opinion are actually, there's no difference of opinion at all. There's a personal situation that went on before that skewed a situation. So I think part of it is reading what that conflict is about. Is it a professional conflict of a difference of opinion, or is it a personal conflict that's getting in the way and becoming an obstacle to moving forward?
Other questions? Bob, you had one.
Yeah, I do.
Hold on.
Hi, I'm Bob Goodson at PCS Engineering. How are you? I want to be a contrarian, okay? I want to offer the idea that for this country to be competitive in manufacturing, there are certain areas where the government has to intervene in our favor, whether it's state and local or federal. It may take the form of protectionist legislation. It may take the form of subsidies, but especially in heavy manufacturing. I grew up in Western Massachusetts, and I saw the manufacturing leave. It was incredible, all right? Springfield, Mass, if anyone knows where that is. So I guess I really want to save manufacturing and regrow it here. I think that drastic action may be taken to make that happen. What do you think?
Great point.
I think the point is, what's the time frame that you want manufacturing to happen? I think manufacturing will evolve. We'll have, inflation throughout the world. You go to different countries, You have the gentrification of China, so it will occur. But if one wants to accelerate manufacturing in the United States, certainly subsidies and incentives will accelerate that cycle. I think that we underestimate the impact of innovation in manufacturing, that direct linkage, and there are a couple things with regard to kind of the U.S. and manufacturing policy that we underestimate. One is that direct linkage between producing and innovating, and there is a linkage there. Second is the jobs that it creates and what it allows us to do in our economies. And the third is the capital flight in making things overseas. Our capital goes overseas, and because of current taxation, it stays overseas. And so each of these have a consequence to our economy. And so I think we see it in silos, and I'm not sure it's as siloed in the real world as we put them in their boxes. And if we saw this a little bit more holistically, my guess is we'd look at manufacturing a little bit differently.
I just want to add, well, I mentioned earlier, Susan, you mentioned earlier the Bush-Miller Commission coming out of Annapolis, pro-business. I mentioned earlier Kathy Snyder's Competitors Coalition, and our good friend Don Fry from the Greater Baltimore Committee, he too put together a business commission. So my point I want to reiterate, and it's within the context, we've got 3 powerful initiatives that are saying it's time we quit talking, and it's time we identify what we need to do to advance a pro-business agenda, and I'm convinced that a piece of that will clearly be manufacturing and what next generation manufacturing is going to look like. But you're right, Bob, it is going to take government in a different way. But think about what I said earlier, if I may. In Maryland, I mean, we are just like #1 in all this wonderful innovation and creativity. It just makes sense that we become a national showcase for next generation manufacturing. We just build on that asset. We need engineers to build that new enterprise, Jenny, that new manufacturing enterprise that says it's not what it was, but it can be what it should be. So let's make it what it should be. Questions? Ah, good. Getting my exercise in. Now, if this was Ellen, I'd be doing this, right? Okay.
Great, I love it. Hello, Pamela Call, Procter & Gamble. I just moved to Maryland 6 months ago. Anybody else that recently moved to Maryland? Okay. Do you feel like we need more government to help us move to Maryland, or we need government to get out of our way and we'll move here? Thank you so much for the contrary, I apologize I didn't catch your name. Thank you for raising the question. Bob. Thank you, Bob. It was 10 short people hours for my husband and I to get our driver's license through the DMV, and 900 small dollars later, my little Honda Civic and my family minivan are now registered in Maryland. Why are we doing that to ourselves? Government, get out of our way. And oh, by the way, they didn't know what customer service meant. You know, we need to hold we are citizens, not servants. You know, we are not subjects. We need to hold our government responsible and get out of our way so we can bring people here. And that would be my challenge. How can we smartly empower our own manufacturing to be here? Thank you.
The short answer is join RMI, and we'll help you in that fight. Anybody on the panel want to respond?
Yeah.
That issue you talked about, I know you know about it.
On our commission, actually, it's one of the, which is Maryland itself, you know, making processes leaner, it comes very naturally within a manufacturing environment. You know, manufacturing has been lean for many years, that which is here in the United States. And what's remarkable is that same initiative, actually, Jeff Hughes, who headed Maryland World Class Manufacturing Consortium, and is a great guide of lean manufacturing, gave a presentation on lean government practices recently. And it's just that. How do we connect the dots to make things smarter, easier, faster, when we have the tools to do that? And a smile would be very nice as well. So let us welcome you to Maryland and say, be a part, since you understand manufacturing, be a part of the community that can help lean things out to make things smarter and easier to be here. Because it's a great community to live in and plenty of room for continuous improvement.
I can't give an example where government did get involved and it helped. Seriously, it's time for a little ad here. RMI, Regional Manufacturing Institute, this past year was awarded $3 million to go out and to help manufacturers become more energy efficient. And I'm proud to say that Northrop Grumman is part of that program, and we're still recruiting companies to do that. That money actually came through the Maryland Energy Administration, and Governor O'Malley directly got involved in to ensure that a certain amount of money was set aside to help Maryland manufacturing for the purposes of energy efficiency. And if you don't understand what the importance of energy efficiency is, talk to me later on. But there are lots of examples, but I think what we're really saying is that the weight that we have to lift to create that next generation is going to require government involvement in a way that comes up with a solution, not a problem. And I don't think we can do it by ourselves. I think, fortunately, we have people like Suzy Ganz, who's involved with the Economic Development Commission, and others who can say, and working with government to say, the way we have been doing it is not as effective as the way we should be doing it. So, and welcome to Maryland, too.
And others like Kathy Snyder and Don Fry and the folks from DBED who are working together to be able to coordinate what that's going to look like. I mean, I think that the identification of the problem is clear, right? And we'll have a clear, I think when you're looking at, first of all, how much does business matter to this community that's doing lots of research? I think part of that is the process of educating people about the impact of business and how much it impacts the funds available to then educate and provide all these other services. So it's a process.
It is, and I can tell you